back to the First Gnostic Church of Christ. In this video, we begin the read and commentary of the next text from Codex number 7, titled The Teachings of Slivanus. This particular version translated by Malcolm L. Peel and Jane Zandi. And as before, let's first provide a backdrop regarding this text, and we'll go into the biblical account of Silvanus as well to find out who this individual is. So the Teachings of Slivanus translated around 350 AD. The original Greek version was likely written near Alexandria between 200 and early 300 AD. Now keep in mind, most all of the biblical as well as Gnostic scriptures were written somewhere between 100 to up to 400 AD. So bear that in mind. So this is well within that time window. Scholars typically consider it a Gnostic work. It is a rare example of an early Christian wisdom text and was used in monastic circles. The content of the text encourages the reader to seek wisdom and knowledge, embrace Christ as the king and the teacher, and to cast out any negative influences. God and Christ are described as divine, with Christ being an emanation of God's power, wisdom, and life. The text instructs the reader to fear God, glorify Him through good works, and be pure. Now again, recall that these writers come from a time when this idea of Christ being a king or Lord or God is someone that you're to fear, and fear equals respect, and respect equals fear was very commonplace at that time. But of course, if you recall, both in Gnostic as well as biblical texts, Christ makes it very clear God isn't someone to fear, but someone who loves you and is someone to love. And also, Christ does not want to be considered a king or a Lord. And he makes that very abundant and clear throughout the text as he asks people to stand up, get off of your knees, don't call me Lord, things of that nature. All right, now a little bit of a background about Silvanus. And I'm taking this from BibleHub.com under the section Row in the Early Church. Silvanus first appears in the biblical narrative in Acts 15:22, where he is described as a leading member of the church in Jerusalem. He was chosen, along with Judas, called Barsabbas, to accompany Paul and Barnabas to Antioch with a letter from the Jerusalem Council. This mission was crucial in resolving the dispute over Gentile circumcision, as recorded in Acts 15:23 through 29. Silvanus' role as a trusted leader is further emphasized in Acts 15:32, where he is described as a prophet who encouraged and strengthened the believers in Antioch. His ability to exhort and build up the church was a significant asset to the early Christian mission. He is best known for his missionary work alongside Paul after the disagreement between Paul and Barnabas. Silvanus was chosen by Paul to accompany him on his second missionary journey, Acts 15:40. Together, they traveled through regions such as Syria, Cilicia, and Macedonia, spreading the gospel and establishing churches. In Philippia, Silvanus and Paul were imprisoned for casting out a spirit of divination from a slave girl, Acts 16:16 through 24. Despite their imprisonment, they prayed and sang hymns, leading to a miraculous earthquake that opened the prison doors. This event resulted in the conversion of the Philippian jailer and his household. Silvanus continued to work with Paul in Thessalonica and Berea, where they faced opposition from local Jews. His steadfastness in the face of persecution demonstrated his commitment to the mission and his unwavering faith. Paul includes Silvanus in the opening greetings, indicating his significant role in the composition and delivery of the letters of Thessalonica. His involvement in the writing process underscores a theological insight and pastoral concern for the early Christian communities. Additionally, Silvanus is mentioned in 1 Peter 5:12, where the Apostle Peter refers to him as a faithful brother and credits him with helping to write the letter. This association with both Paul and Peter highlights Silvanus' respected position within the apostolic circle and his influence in the early church. And he is also supposedly one of the 70 disciples of Christ that were sent out throughout Asia Minor to spread the gospel. Really what we're seeing here is Silvanus is a very prominent figure that had a lot of influence across both Peter and Paul, as well as Judas and some of the other leaders of not only the church, but also the government. I believe he was considered a delegate for a senate of that time, the Roman Empire. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start our reading commentary of the Teachings of Silvanus. And really what we're going to get mainly is Silvanus reminding us the importance of education, knowledge, and being aware and staying wise, reminding ourselves how this world can mislead us and that we want to remain steadfast. All right, so here he begins. Abolish every childish time of life. Acquire for yourself strength of mind and soul, and intensify the struggle against every folly of the passions of love and base wickedness, and love of praise, and fondness of contention, and tiresome jealousy, and wrath, and anger, and the desire for avarice. So you can see how these are timely behaviors or urges, many humans going back thousands of years. And today you see this rampant within modern general society where people are constantly angry at each other and envious and greedy of each other, passionate about what they don't have, and there's contention between different so-called groups. Guard your camp and weapons and spears. Arm yourself and all the soldiers, which are the words. Now, again, he's making it clear when he's talking about weapons and spears, he's not talking about violence. He's making them analogous to words that you're using. And the commanders, which are the counsels, and your mind as a guiding principle. Paul talked about arming yourself with the spirit, that you are a soldier of God, so to speak. Again, none of this is to mean that we're to be militaristic. This is a misunderstanding. Silvanus worked with many of the centurions of the time. He was a delegate, and so he oversaw many important factions and missions. And so again, he's reminding us to use our words as a way to arm ourselves and our commanders, meaning our faculties, as a way to counsel ourselves, and our mind as our guiding principle. This particular text is spoken as though it's a father to a son, by the way. So it's a very paternal way of expressing the message of Christ. My son, throw every robber out of your gates. And again, he's talking about you. He's not talking about your land, and none of this is literal, analogous to something spiritual. Throw every robber out of your gates. So the robber here is the one that's going to steal, right? Guard all your gates with torches. So this is remaining lit, having sight to see. You have light within you, and you're shining that light so you can see where you're going, which are the word. And you will acquire through all these things a quiet life. But he who will not guard these things will become like a city which is desolate, since it has been captured. And what is it captured by? Well, all the things he talked about before: avarice and anger and division and hatred and jealousy. All kinds of wild beasts have trampled upon it, for thoughts which are not good are evil wild beasts. And in Gnosticism, again, evil is referring to that thing that divides, that thing that creates envy and enmity. And your city will be filled with robbers, and you will not be able to acquire peace, but only all kinds of savage wild beasts, the thing that can cause your mind to become undisciplined, wild, and out of control. The wicked one, who is a tyrant, is lord over these. While directing this, he, the wicked one, is beneath the great mirror. The whole city, which is your soul, will perish. Remove yourself from these things, O wretched soul. Bring your guide and your teacher. The mind is the guide, but reason is the teacher. They will bring you out of destruction and dangers. Notice here, there's nothing here about forgiveness of sin, and I have to go to church and ask for the Father. What did you do this weekend? Well, I drank too many beers, whatever. It's not about that. It's about enlightenment. It's about knowing your soul is being led astray. Listen, my son, to my advice. Do not show your back to enemies and flee, but rather pursue them as a strong one. Be not an animal with men pursuing you, but rather be a man with you pursuing the evil wild beasts, lest somehow they become victorious over you and trample upon you on a dead man, and you perish due to their wickedness. And wickedness is the wisdom of this world, being led astray. O wretched man, what will you do if you fall into their hands? Protect yourself, lest you be delivered into the hands of your enemies. Entrust yourself to the pair of friends, reason and mind, and no one will be victorious over you. Alluding to engagement with the world in a more threatening way, whether it be your soldier or they're coming after you, or their wild beasts are coming after you. Instead of you allowing them to overcome you You use reason and mind to overcome them. In other words, to manage them. May God dwell in your camp. May His Spirit protect your gates. And may the mind of the divinity protect the walls. Let holy reason become a torch in your mind, burning the wood, which is the whole of sin. And the whole of sin is what? It's the first mention of sin. Well, the whole of sin is everything you just talked about, which is basically narrowed down to one thing: ignorance. That's the whole of sin. And if you do these things, O my son, you will be victorious over all your enemies, and they will not be able to wage war against you. Neither will they be able to resist, nor will they be able to get in your way. For if you find these, you will despise them as deniers of truth. They will speak to you, cajoling you and enticing you, not because they are afraid of you, but because they are afraid of those who dwell within you, namely the guardians of the divinity and the teaching. So what they're afraid of is not you personally, but they're afraid of the Christ within, the hope of glory. They're afraid of that. And again, we're not really talking about other people analogous to a higher correspondence, spiritual correspondence. He's talking about mindfulness and reason and overcoming the opposite of those, which is lack of reason, ignorance, and lack of mindfulness. My son, accept the education and the teaching. Do not flee from the education and the teaching. Again, he's stressing the importance of education. Now, of course, today, education is frowned upon generally. Like today's society, in the past 10, 15 years, we've seen a sort of slow march toward people not respecting education as a general rule of thumb. And this is supposed to be frowned on now. Well, you can see a theme that just keeps reoccurring, that the powers that be want to keep people generally ignorant. But when you are taught, accept it with joy. And if you are educated in any matter, do what is good. You will play it a crown of education by your guiding principle. Put on the holy teaching like a robe. Make yourself noble-minded through good conduct. Obtain the austerity of good discipline. Judge yourself like a wise judge. Do not go astray from my teaching, and do not acquire ignorance, lest you lead your people astray. Do not flee from the divine and the teaching which are within you. For he who is teaching you loves you very much, for he shall bequeath to you a worthy austerity. Cast out the animal nature which is within you, and do not allow base thought to enter you. For you know the way which I teach. If it is good to rule over the few as you see it, how much better it is that you rule over everyone, since you are exalted above every congregation, every people. When he's talking about ruling over everyone, he's talking about managing yourself. Because once you do that, nobody can become your master. You become master of self, and therefore nobody's ruling over you. And every people are prominent in every respect, and are a divine reason, having become master over every power which kills the soul. Notice he said that every person deserves respect because we have divine reason. My son, does anyone want to be a slave? Why then do you trouble yourself wrongly? My son, do not fear anyone except God alone. Now here he's talking about God, to fear God. But again, we got to remember Paul and Silvanus and Judas, they come from that way of thinking. So, but in Gnostic texts, we've come to understand that the opposite is true about God. There's nothing to fear. Cast the deceitfulness of the devil from you. Accept the light for your eyes and cast the darkness from you. Live in Christ, and you acquire treasure in heaven. Do not become a sausage made of many things which are useless, and do not become a guide in your blind ignorance. My son, listen to my teaching, which is good and useful, and end the sleep which weighs heavily upon you. Depart from the forgetfulness which fills you with darkness, since if you were unable to do anything, I would not have said these things to you. But Christ has come in order to give you this gift. Why do you pursue the darkness when the light is at your disposal? Why do you drink stale water, though sweet wine is available for you? Wisdom summoned you, yet you desire folly. Not by your own desire do you do these things, but it is the animal nature within you that does them. So again, he's stressing your spirit is perfect. Listen to yourself, the Christ within, the hope of glory. That is the seed Father has planted in you. That is the whole self that is going to bring fulfillment. It's going to bring you back to the higher realms. That if you fall prey, it's not because of that. It's because of the base nature of the flesh body, because of this realm that we live in. He's to remind you of that fact and not to use that as a crutch or as an excuse or as a way to fall back into that trap weak-mindedly, but rather to remain wise and mindful and summon your wisdom and summon your Gnostic knowledge that you've learned where you came from, and that nothing in this realm is ultimately going to bring you fulfillment, only that you bring forth what's within you that's going to bring you fulfillment. Not what you take in you, but what you bring from within you. Wisdom summons you in her goodness, saying, Come to me, all of you, O foolish ones, that you may receive a gift, the understanding which is good and excellent. I am given to you a high priestly garment, which is woven from every kind of wisdom. What else is evil, death, except ignorance? And points it out a second time. One and only sin, second time he points it out, is ignorance. What else is evil, darkness, except familiarity with forgetfulness? And forgetfulness is a little different than ignorance, but they're really under the same, which is to remain blind. Really, forgetfulness is you have become so familiar with this realm, you've forgotten your true nature. But ignorance is to know on some level, but you choose to ignore. You choose to be in a state of ignoring. That's where that word comes from, ignore, ignorance. Cast your anxiety upon God alone. Do not become desirous of gold and silver, which are profitless, but clothe yourself with wisdom like a robe. Put knowledge on yourself like a crown. Be seated upon a throne of perception, for these are yours, and you will receive them again on high another time. And so again, you're being compared literally to a king. You have a crown. You're on a throne. What's crowning you is knowledge, and your throne is perception. Not only in this time, but the life thereafter. You're going to be receiving it again on high. For a foolish man usually puts on folly like a robe, and like a garment of sorrow he puts on shame. See, notice he's using words like shame and guilt, wretchedness. He's talking about people that think this way, which is the idea of sin, of being what you do in this world, like moralistically. That is not going to save you. If you just confess my sins, I don't know, I smoked weed last night, forgive me. Okay, now I'm going to go to heaven, live forever and ever because I confessed that I smoked weed and I'm never going to do it again. Well, that is not what Christ's talking about. He's talking about Gnosis, missing the mark of understanding. Therefore, go and sin no more. No longer have that misunderstanding. No longer live in ignorance or darkness. That's what Christ's talking about when he talks about sin. And he crowns himself with ignorance. This is these individuals that think in this way, and takes his seat upon a throne of nescience. For while he is without reason, he leads only himself astray, for he is guided by ignorance, and he goes the ways of the desire of every passion. He swims in the desires of life and has sunk. To be sure, he thinks that he finds profit when he does all the things which are without profit. The wretched man who goes through all of these things will die, because he does not have the mind, the helmsman. But he is like a ship which the wind tosses to and fro, and like a loose horse which has no rider. For this man needed the rider, which is reason. For the wretched one went astray because he did not want advice. He was thrown to and fro by these three misfortunes. He acquired death as a father, ignorance as a mother, and evil counsels. He acquired them as friends and brothers. Therefore, foolish one, you should mourn for yourself. And again, he's telling you to go within. Stop looking at other people to judge whether you're good or not, to compare yourself to them. Well, Joe is much worse off than I am. He's going to hell in a handbasket. I'm better than him. Let me go tell him and give him this little booklet that shows how he's going to go to hell if he doesn't confess to Jesus his sins. Silvanus is reminding you the work is not out there. The work is within you. From now on, then, my son, return to your divine nature. Return to yourself. Cast from you these evil, deceiving friends, these people that are telling you this is the way, when it's in fact the opposite of the way. The way and the light and the truth is already within you, the Christ hope of glory that's been seated in you. That's what Christ keeps talking about when he talks about the metaphor of the seed. As accept Christ, this true friend, as a good teacher. Cast from you death, which has become a father to you. For death did not exist, nor will exist at the end. And why? Because the spirit is eternal. Your body will dissolve, but your spirit will continue. But since you cast from yourself God, the Holy Father, the true life, the spring of life, therefore you have obtained death as a father, and acquire ignorance as a mother. They have robbed you of the true knowledge. Again, we understand from the Old Testament, the Lord God, Jehovah, introduced death when he cursed Adam and Eve, when they took them out of the garden. Because before that, they had access to the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, which is Sophia, and the Christ. Christ is the tree of life. Sophia is wisdom, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But return, my son, to your first father, God, and wisdom, your mother, from whom you came into being from the very first, in order that you might fight against all your enemies, the powers of the adversary. Reminding us again, that battle is not outside there. It's within you. Listen, my son, to my advice. Do not be arrogant in opposition to every good opinion, but take for yourself the side of divinity and reason. Keep the holy commandments of Jesus Christ, and you will reign over every place on earth. And what are the commandments? Well, there are two. To love yourself and everybody else like you love yourself, basically, and to love Father, the monad, as you love yourself. And that's it. Everything else hangs on that now. That's the new commandment, the holy commandment. And you will reign over every place on earth, and will be honored by the angels and archangels. Then you will acquire them as friends and fellow servants, and you will acquire places in heaven above. Do not bring grief and trouble to the divine which is within you, but when you will care for it, will request of it that you remain pure, and will become self-controlled in your soul and body. You will become a throne of wisdom, and one belonging to God's household. He will give you a great light through it, wisdom. But before everything else, know your birth, know yourself. And what's that birth? Well, that you came from the pleroma. That is, from what substance you are, or from what race, or from what species. Understand that you have come into being from three races, from the earth, from the formed, and from the created. The body has come into being from the earth with an earthly substance, but the formed, for the sake of the soul, has come into being from the thought of the divine. The created, however, is the mind, and that's the spirit. So again, as talk about tripartite human, the three parts human, the spiritual, the soul-oriented, and the flesh-oriented human. The created, however, is the mind, which has come into being in conformity with the image of God. The divine mind has substance from the divine, but the soul is that which He, God, formed from their own hearts. And remember, it's through Sophia. She brought the soul forth, so that there would be a mind that could receive the Christ, and the Christ the seed, which is Gnosis. For I think that it, the soul, exists as a wife of that which has come into being in conformity with the image. And see, Silvanus is telling you what he thinks, and he is using Gnosis to tune in to what he understands, which in this case, we understood from reading other Gnostic texts in the Bible, that in fact it is. Sophia is the soul of mankind, and therefore is feminine. So when he's suggesting it's a wife, he is lining up with a true understanding. But matter is the substance of the body, which has come into being from the earth. And that matter is the body, the flesh body. If you mix yourself, you acquire the three parts as you fall from virtue into inferiority. Live according to the mind, the spirit. Do not think about things pertaining to the flesh. Acquire strength, for the mind is strong. If you fall from this other, you have become male-female. This male-female is then a splitting up of self. Because the whole self, the spiritual self, remember, is a balancing. It's a wholeness of both the male-female. So if you fall prey to the ways of this world, then remember, Christ said, let no one put asunder what the Father has brought together, which is the male and the female. And remember what happened in chapter 2 of Genesis. Well, the Lord God came and split the female from the male by putting Adam into a sleep, meaning into ignorance. And he lost his feminine self. And if you cast out yourself the substance of the mind, which is thought, you have cut off the male part. And that is the part that's going to keep you in Gnosis, and turn yourself to the female part alone. You have become psychic since you have received the substance of the form. And so the psychic self is necessary in this realm. Remember that ultimately Christ talked about when the female becomes male, becomes a him, then we have found paradise. Meaning everybody is a him, essentially. Meaning we all have free will. Female refers to the part, the heme, the blood, the part that is coagulated, the psychic part that has become diminished because Sophia saw herself as less than the Father. And that resulted in this universe where everybody seeing themselves as a reflection of Sophia's misunderstanding, the original anomaly Therefore, everybody's seeing themselves as inferior, and they walk around with that initial injury, initial trauma. And that's what everybody's reconciling now. And everybody's running around trying to get thumbs up and etc., etc. Since you have received the substance of the formed, if you cast out the smallest part of this, so that you do not acquire again a human part, but you have accepted for yourself the animal thought and likeness, you have become fleshly, since you have taken on animal nature. For if it is difficult to find a cyclical man, how much more so to find the Lord? In this case, this individual, Silvanus, is suggesting we have to have Gnosis. We have to use our minds. Because without Gnosis, there can be no reconciliation for the psychic self. The soul is the mind in Gnosticism. But Silvanus here is suggesting the mind is spirit. They are, in fact, both. They can be both soul and spirit. Remember that in the truest nature, we are both male and female. But it's Christ's gift that was imparted from him, from the Mother Father, when he came to this realm. He requested mind so that man could receive him. But that part is a feminine receptacle, but its goal is to project outward through its will, using the mind proactively, so therefore it's masculine. Everything has a dual nature in its truest form in the spiritual realm. It's both male and female. We have to remind ourselves that when we're reading through here, we're trying to understand, is he talking about in this realm, or is he talking about in the syzygistic pairing understanding in the pleroma? Well, we're talking about this realm. So in this realm, the female has fallen. It's the fallen nature of Sophia into this realm. So therefore, it's the psychic self, it's the soul self that is injured. The whole psyche is there to talk about trauma so that it can rectify the trauma. But the trauma is also being used so that we can take the darkness to bring the light forth, to use the darkness as a kind of fermentation or soil or fertilization, and that brings out the unique self. But I say that God is in the spiritual one. Man has taken shape from the substance of God. The divine soul shares partly in this one. So he's telling us this, even though the soul is not at the level of the spirit, it is still in the image of God. It is not the light of God itself. The light of God itself is the spirit within everything, the Christ within. But the divine soul is still partially made in the image or likeness of God, is what he's describing. Therefore, it's not at that level of the flesh. The divine soul shares partly in this one. Furthermore, it shares partly in the flesh. The base soul is wont to turn from side to side, ... So missing word here, which it images the truth. It projects the truth through the darkness, so that you see the light coming through the darkness, and it reveals what's in the dark, and it reveals the truth. And so this is the whole nature of this realm. So this is sort of the intermediary between light and dark, essentially. Remember that in one of the other Gnostic texts we talked about at the very beginning, there was pure light and pure darkness was not putrid darkness. It's only when it became envious of light that it became putrid darkness. There's nothing evil about darkness. When people try to say darkness and evil are the same, they're not. Evil is dividing things up, whereas darkness is purest form, is no less or more destructive than is light. But in this realm, darkness has become putrid. It is good for you, O man, to turn yourself toward the human rather than toward the animal nature. Toward the fleshly. You will take on the likeness of the part toward which you will turn yourself. And again, he's asking you again to go within, because that's where the work is. He's not saying what you do out there is going to result in the work. That's not the work. Peeking through windows to see what Joe is doing or Susie's doing, or bringing it up at church, or putting laws on books so that so-and-so can't marry or so-and-so can't do this. That is not the work of Christ. That's not what Christ asked of us. The work is within. And we need a society that's completely free of any kind of laws like that, except laws that are, of course, pragmatic to prevent somebody breaking in your house or harming you. But outside of those reasons, trying to control others' behaviors, as long as it doesn't impact you directly, is not what Christ is asking of us. Because why? The work is you, not other people. In trying to force other people to do what you think is what is your interpretation of the Bible they're supposed to do is not the work of Christ. It's dividing people. That's the opposite. You are not somehow saving them or doing something wonderful that God is really proud of you and happy. In fact, it's the opposite. The work is you, not others. All right, so we're going to close it there, and we will pick back up in our next video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, have a blessed day.